for most of us, it's about making smart choices, right? But for Sam Walton, the guy who founded Walmart, it was a philosophy, one that built a global empire and pretty much defined his entire life, often in the most surprising ways. How did a man who famously drove an old pickup truck build one of the biggest companies in the world? Let's get into it. Okay, so by the mid 80s, the world knew Sam Walton for one thing. He was insanely wealthy. I mean, he was on top of a retail giant that was completely rewriting the rules of business. The media swarmed him, expecting to see a life of pure luxury, yachts, private islands, the whole nine yards. But what they found was something else entirely. A man who seemed almost allergic to his own money. He was a puzzle that nobody could quite figure out. And this quote right here, this is the central puzzle of Sam Walton. How on earth could the richest man in America just shrug off losing a fortune overnight? What was driving this guy if it wasn't the money itself? This line completely baffled Wall Street, but you know what? It's the key to understanding everything about him. To solve this puzzle, we have to go way back to the roots of his legendary and often eccentric frugality. And this wasn't some act for the cameras, this was etched into his very being. Walton grew up smack in the middle of the Great Depression. He saw with his own eyes what happened when families lost everything. His own father had to repossess farms for a living. Sam always said they were never poor, but there was never, ever a dollar to spare. So for him, this wasn't just about being careful with money. It was about understanding its true weight, a lesson he learned during the hardest of times. So from the earliest age, he was a contributor, not a taker. I mean, this list of his childhood jobs tells the whole story. From milking cows before school to running paper routes that he grew into a real business. He was always hustling. Every single dime was earned through hard physical work. He learned exactly what a dollar was worth because he could feel the sweat it took to make one. Nothing captures his mindset better than this quote from his brother Bud. You know, it sounds like a cliche, but for the Waltons, it was real. This wasn't about being greedy. It was about respect. Respect for the work and respect for the value that even a single penny represented. But this frugality, that was only half the story. It was paired with something else entirely. Because valuing a dollar was only one side of the coin. The other side was this relentless, all-consuming drive to compete and to win. And that fire was lit long before he ever sold a single thing. Turns out, his mother was incredibly ambitious for him, always pushing him to be the best. And boy, did he take that to heart. For Sam, second place just wasn't an option. And this wasn't just about business. It was about everything. It was a core part of who he was. Just look at this track record. Becoming the youngest Eagle Scout in the state, that doesn't happen by accident. Quarterbacking an undefeated state championship team, and get this, think about it for a second. He never played in a losing football game in his entire life. He learned to expect to win. This mindset, this habit of winning, would become his greatest weapon in the cutthroat world of retail. So, you've got this super frugal guy who is also fiercely competitive. How does that actually play out in the real world? Well, it all started with a huge risk in a small Arkansas town. After he got out of the army, Sam was ready to go, so he borrowed 20 grand from his father-in-law to take his first big swing. He bought a Ben Franklin franchise in this little cotton town, and by all accounts, it was a terrible store. I mean, it was losing money, the rent was just absurdly high, and to top it all off, a much bigger, much more successful competitor was right across the street. It was the perfect challenge for a guy who just loved to win. The numbers were just completely stacked against him. His competitor was making more than double what he was and was run by an experienced manager. Meanwhile, Sam was paying a rent so high it was almost unheard of. By any rational measure, he was set up to fail. But Sam didn't see it that way. He saw a scoreboard, and he knew exactly how he was going to run up the points. So, what did he do? He out-hustled everyone. He was constantly in his competitor's store, studying their prices, learning from his rival. He broke the franchise rules, driving his own car with a little trailer all the way to Tennessee to find cheaper goods, totally cutting out the middleman. And he turned his storefront into an attraction with popcorn and ice cream machines, stuff nobody else was doing. He was scrappy, innovative, and just completely obsessed. It was during this time, experimenting relentlessly in that small Arkansas town, that Sam Walton stumbled upon the single most important idea of his entire career. It was a discovery that would, literally, change retail forever. It's a question that just seems to defy business logic, right? The standard practice was simple: mark up your goods to a certain price to guarantee a profit. But Sam started to question that basic assumption. The math behind his breakthrough was surprisingly simple. He found a supplier who could sell him ladies' panties for cheaper than his own company warehouse. Now, the traditional price was 3 for $1. Sam decided to sell them at 4 for $1. Okay, let's break that down. Yes, his profit on each individual item was smaller, and that's the part that scared other retailers. But here's the crucial part. Because the price was so good, he sold 3 times as many. The lower margin was just completely blown away by the massive increase in sales. And there it is, straight from the man himself. Lower your margin, but make it up and then some on sheer volume. He realized that customers would flock to the store for a bargain, and he could make way more total profit by selling more things for less. This simple lesson, learned from selling ladies' underwear in a tiny town in Arkansas, became the engine of Walmart. It was the secret sauce. Everything that came later, the huge warehouses, the crazy logistics, the global supply chain, all of it was built to serve this one fundamental idea: drive prices down and volume will drive profits up. But even after all that success, after achieving more than anyone could imagine, Sam Walton was haunted by this question. He knew his own incredible drive came from the Great Depression, from a need to win, and from a deep respect for a hard-earned dollar. He built an empire on those values, but he was never sure if he could pass them on. And that kind of leaves us